My dear chosen one, today I want to speak directly to that silent part of your soul that wonders why healing seems to have made you impossible in the eyes of those who once claimed to love you. You fought so hard to rise from the places that broke you. You gathered the pieces of your heart, you listened to your inner voice, and you chose to become whole again. And yet, as you healed, you noticed the shift. The warmth around you faded. The voices that once cheered for you grew quiet, and those who once stayed close began to drift away. You thought healing would bring you closer to those who loved you, but instead, it left you standing alone, wondering, why does my light now feel like a burden to them? There is a hidden paradox in this journey that few ever speak about. While you were broken, they called it love, but what they truly loved was the version of you that needed them, that validated their role in your life. The moment you began to stand tall, to claim your own soul again, something shifted in their hearts. No longer could they feel necessary, no longer could they play the part of savior, guide, or protector. And so, instead of celebrating your growth, they began to label you. Too proud, too cold, too difficult. But was it really you who changed so much? Or was it the illusion of the bond that was finally shattered by your healing? In this message, we will walk together through the truth of what really happens when you heal, and why it often reveals the conditional nature of the love you once knew. This will not only bring you peace, but also clarity to honor your healing and open your heart to connections that can truly meet you where you are now. If this is already resonating with your soul, write in the comments, "I choose healing." Let your declaration be seen. And if you feel this message is for you, please leave your like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell so you can continue receiving these truths that your spirit has been longing for. Now, let's begin to uncover what was hidden all along. There was a time, chosen one, when your vulnerability was the bridge that kept certain people close to you. They felt needed. Your pain gave them a sense of purpose. It wasn't always out of malice. Sometimes it was their own brokenness seeking validation in your struggles. Your tears gave them a reason to stay. Your confusion gave them a role to play. And your wounds made them feel like healers. But as you began to rise, as you started tending to your own soul, the bridge they walked across began to crumble, and that left them unsure of where they stood in your life anymore. The so-called love you received in those moments wasn't always love at all. Not the kind that liberates, not the kind that celebrates your light. It was a love tied to conditions, to hidden expectations that you would stay small, stay needy, stay just fragile enough for them to feel like they mattered. When you began to step into your strength, that hidden contract was broken. And the shock of it wasn't only theirs, it was yours too. You started to see how much of what you thought was love was, in truth, attachment to your pain. Your healing began quietly. It started in the small moments no one saw, the nights you chose to pray instead of despair, the mornings you decided to stand up even when your heart was heavy. And in those sacred steps toward wholeness, the energy between you and those who stayed close began to shift. They couldn't quite name it, but they felt it. And rather than drawing closer to witness your rebirth, some began to feel threatened by the parts of you that no longer matched their expectations. And so, the labels came. Suddenly, you weren't kind, you were cold. You weren't humble, you were proud, you weren't loving, you were distant. But the truth? The truth is that you were becoming whole. And wholeness often looks like distance to those who only knew how to approach you through your brokenness. It wasn't that your heart closed, it's that it no longer opened in the same old patterns that kept you small. And that frightened them more than your pain ever did. This is the question your soul has been whispering. Was it really me who changed? Or was it their image of me that no longer fits the truth? When you heal, you don't become impossible. You become clear. you become true. And sometimes, clarity disrupts comfort. Your light exposes dynamics that could only exist in the shadows of your hurt. That's why now, they struggle to find their place in your life. Because the rules have changed. Not because you pushed them out, but because healing rewrote the script. And in the silence that follows, you may have wondered if healing was a mistake. You may have felt guilt creeping in, asking if you should dim your light just enough to bring them back. But let me tell you this, your healing was never the problem. The discomfort others feel in the presence of your strength is not your burden to carry. You did not break the bond. The bond was built on conditions that could not withstand your truth. And now, the task is not to shrink, but to stay faithful to your soul's unfolding. And so came the space, the emptiness that healing sometimes leaves behind, the quiet that feels like loss, but is truly the soil where new, truer connections will grow. It is not punishment, it is preparation. And as you sit in that silence, you are not alone. For this is the moment your soul begins to call in what aligns with your healed self. This is where the true story begins, where you choose love that meets you as you are, not as you were. You began to notice the weight of the isolation that healing can bring. At first, the silence feels almost unbearable, as if your voice no longer echoes in the places where it once mattered. The people who once checked in on you, who once seemed to care so deeply about your struggles, grew distant when they realized your strength no longer required their validation. And in that space, doubts began to rise. Was your light too bright? Was your growth too sudden? Did you ask for too much simply by choosing to stand in your truth? The loneliness of healing is not often spoken about, but it is real, and it tests the resolve of even the strongest souls. The world around you, too, began to confirm the labels whispered by those you once trusted. Without understanding your journey, they echoed what they heard, that you had become difficult, cold, impossible to reach. They mistook your boundaries for walls, your clarity for arrogance, your peace for distance. And in that chorus of misunderstanding, the temptation grew to return, even for a moment, to the version of yourself that they recognized and applauded. But deep inside, your soul knew that version no longer exists, and to resurrect it would be to betray everything you fought for. There was a moment when your heart broke, not because of rejection, but because of the realization of how much of what you called love was rooted in your pain. The mask fell, and you saw it for what it was, a dynamic that needed you to stay small so others could feel large, that needed your confusion so others could feel wise. And in that moment, grief came, not only for the connections you lost, but for the illusions that kept you tethered for so long. This grief, though heavy, was sacred. It cleared the path for the truth your soul had been seeking. What made this part of the journey harder was the subtle manipulation that sometimes followed. Those who once stayed close began, in small ways, to draw you back toward your old wounds, a kind word laced with guilt, a memory shared to stir nostalgia, a suggestion that maybe you've changed too much, that the problem lies in your growth rather than their discomfort. And in those moments, you felt the pull because you loved them, because you remembered the good, because you hoped they could walk with you into this new season. But again, your soul whispered, do not return to what you outgrew. And here is the question that forms like a quiet storm inside you. Is it worth dimming your light to keep company with those unwilling to see it? Is the price of acceptance your own fragmentation? The answer, though painful, is no. Your healing costs too much to give it away for the comfort of others. The love that demands you shrink is not love at all. It is fear, dressed as loyalty. And now, more than ever, your task is to stay faithful to your soul's awakening, to honor what you have fought for, even if it means walking alone for a time. There came a moment when you decided, not in anger, not in pride, but in quiet truth, that your integrity mattered more than the approval of those who could not meet you in your fullness. That was the day your real journey began. The day you chose to stand in your light without apology. The day you stopped explaining your growth, stopped negotiating your worth, stopped begging to be understood. And in that choice, you found a new kind of strength, the strength that comes from belonging to yourself, first and always. And then, in the quiet after the storm, you began to hear it, the voice within, stronger now, clearer than before. The world's noise faded, and what remained was the steady rhythm of your own truth, no longer drowned out by the need for validation, no longer clouded by the fear of being misunderstood. This voice, your truest guide, reminded you, you did not lose love in your healing. You lost the illusions that called themselves love. And what remains is the space where real love can find you, as you are, whole and free. And in that sacred stillness, a new clarity began to rise within you. You started to see what you could not see before, that the love which withered as you healed was never truly love at all. Love does not depend on your wounds to exist. Love does not require you to stay broken in order to be worthy. The ones who stepped back as you became whole were drawn not to your soul, but to the version of you that made them feel needed, important, or superior. And now, as that illusion crumbles, you are left standing in a truth that no one can take from you. Real love meets you where you are healed, not where you are hurt. Your eyes began to open to new possibilities, new connections waiting in the distance. Connections not built on the fragile scaffolding of your pain, but on the firm foundation of your light. These are bonds that do not ask you to stay small, that do not shrink in the presence of your strength. And as your soul grows quieter, steadier, you begin to sense them drawing near. The loneliness that once felt so heavy begins to soften, replaced by a hope that whispers, love that honors your truth is already on its way. And here is the revelation that changes everything. The love that left when you healed was never your loss. It was your freedom. It was the universe, God, your own higher self, clearing the space around you so that what is real, what is lasting, what is aligned with your soul's journey could finally come. The ache you feel is not for what you lost, but for what you are still waiting to receive. And that waiting is not empty. It is fertile, sacred ground. It is preparation for the blessings that require your wholeness to fully bloom. You began to understand that the people who turned away weren't villains, nor were they evil. They were simply unable to meet you in a place they had not yet found within themselves. Your healing reflected back to them their own unhealed wounds, their own fears, their own hesitations. And faced with that mirror, they chose distance, because that felt safer than growth. And so, with compassion, you release them. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself enough to let go. And as you released, the tension in your spirit eased. The struggle to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted as you are, it began to dissolve. You no longer needed to prove your worth to those unwilling to see it. You no longer needed to fight for a place in hearts that only opened to your pain. Instead, you turned inward, drawing strength from the truth that had been waiting for you all along, that you were always enough, and that healing simply revealed what was already within you. With this new vision, you began to sense the arrival of relationships built on something different: honesty, respect, equality, and light. The kind of bonds that do not falter when you rise, that do not fear your strength, that do not ask you to hide your brilliance so they can feel comfortable. These new connections come slowly, but surely, drawn to the authenticity you now embody. And in their presence, you begin to remember what real love feels like. Love that does not require you to fracture yourself to be worthy. And so, You stand at a threshold between what was and what will be. The past behind you, honored but no longer clung to. The future before you, unknown but full of promise. And in this sacred in-between, you choose to stay true to your healing, to walk forward with open eyes and an open heart, trusting that what is meant for you will never demand your brokenness as a price. And in that choice, you step into the fullness of who you are, ready to receive what your soul has been waiting for. True love, chosen one, has never asked you to stay small. It has never required your silence, your submission, or your brokenness in exchange for its presence. What you are learning now, through the ache of this season, is that real love honors growth. It celebrates healing. It makes room for your evolution without fear. And if someone could only remain by your side while you were hurting, then they were not in love with your soul, but with their place in your story. Your healing called their bluff. It revealed the conditions hidden beneath their words. And now, though it hurts, you see, love that demands your fragmentation is not love at all. It is dependency, masked as devotion. There is a beautiful and painful truth in the journey of becoming whole. It clears the path of what cannot walk with you into your next chapter. Just as a tree sheds what no longer serves its growth, your spirit, too, sheds relationships that were tied to old versions of you. And this shedding is not cruelty, nor punishment. It is sacred alignment. The loneliness you feel is the space between what was and what is yet to come. It is the necessary clearing so that new seeds, seeds of truth, of light, of unconditional connection, can take root and flourish. And though this space feels empty now, it is rich with promise, waiting for the right souls to meet you in your authenticity. Being called impossible by those who once claimed to love you is not a reflection of who you are, but of what your healing has revealed in them. Your light, chosen one, has become a mirror. And in that mirror, some see the beauty of what is possible, while others see the wounds they have not yet dared to face. It is easier for them to call you difficult than to ask why your strength unsettles them. But do not let their fear define you. Do not let their projections dim your light. What they name as impossible is simply their own unwillingness to rise to the level where real love can dwell. Your presence, now grounded in truth, calls others to rise. And not everyone is ready to answer that call. And so, they distance themselves, not because you did wrong, but because your integrity demands something they are not yet prepared to give: honesty, vulnerability, and growth. The price of your healing is the shedding of relationships that thrived in the soil of your pain. But the reward, chosen one, is the opening of your heart to connections that can thrive in the light of your truth. These are the connections your soul has been seeking all along, the ones that do not ask you to shrink, to bend, to break, only to be. Your healing, though it feels like a solitary path now, is not just for you. It is a service to the world. Every time you choose integrity over approval, truth over comfort, light over the familiar darkness, you become a beacon. Others who are quietly longing for their own freedom will see you, and they will remember what is possible. You are not walking alone, even when it feels that way. You are clearing a path, not just for yourself, but for all those who will one day have the courage to follow. And in that, your light fulfills its highest purpose. The emptiness you feel is not emptiness at all. It is the fertile ground where what is real can finally grow. It is the space where falsehoods have been cleared away, making room for what aligns with the truth of who you are. It is the silence where you learn to hear your own soul clearly, without interference, without noise. And in that silence, something beautiful begins to happen. You start to trust yourself. You start to see that the love you were searching for outside of you has been waiting within you all along. ready to bloom the moment you chose to honor your healing. And so, I invite you, in this moment, to stop running from the silence. To stop mourning the loss of what could only survive in your brokenness. To stop fearing the space that healing creates. For this space is not your enemy. It is your sanctuary. It is the sacred ground upon which a new chapter will be written. And in that chapter, you will find connections that do not tremble at your strength, that do not demand your pain, that do not flinch in the face of your light. This is what awaits you, chosen one. But first, you must choose to stay true to the path your soul has chosen. And now, chosen one, you are beginning to feel it. That quiet, steady return to yourself. The parts of you that once scattered in search of approval, in desperate hope of belonging, are coming home. You stand taller not because you force yourself to be strong, but because your spirit has remembered its own worth. The pieces that once felt lost have woven themselves into a new whole, one that no longer bends to fit into spaces too small for your truth. You are discovering that belonging starts within, and those who are meant for you will recognize you as you are, not as you were when you were wounded. Slowly, the landscape of your life begins to shift. The emptiness that once echoed with loss now hums with quiet possibility. New faces, new connections, new opportunities start to appear, drawn not to your pain, but to your authenticity. These are the souls who do not shrink in the presence of your light, who do not need you to be less so they can feel more. And though these bonds may come gently, quietly, without fanfare, you will feel their difference. You will know them by their peace, their steadiness, their willingness to meet you in the truth of who you have become. What once felt like the end, the loss of familiar faces, the breaking of old ties, now reveals itself as a beginning. This is the reward of staying true to your healing, discovering that you do not have to choose between love and truth. The love that is meant for you will never ask you to abandon yourself. It will never require your silence, your shrinking, your fragmentation. And as you open your heart again, slowly, carefully, you will find that real love fits where you are whole, not where you are broken. It honors your strength, it welcomes your light, and it walks beside you with no conditions. And so I leave you with this truth. You were never impossible. You were simply becoming who you were always meant to be. And in that becoming, you outgrew what could not sustain you, what could not walk with you into the fullness of your purpose. Let them say what they will. Let them misunderstand, if they must. Your task is not to convince them, nor to return to what you have outgrown. Your task is to honor your healing, to trust the journey, and to keep walking toward the love that sees you, the love that stays, the love that celebrates the truth of your soul. If these words have found a home in your heart, I invite you to write in the comments, "I choose the light." Let this be your declaration to yourself, to the world, and to the universe, that you are ready for love that meets you in truth. Please, if this message has brought you clarity or comfort, leave your like, subscribe to this channel, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss what your spirit longs to hear. I want to thank every soul who has supported this mission through Buy Me a Coffee. Your generosity is not only keeping this message alive, but also helping it expand. If you too feel the call to support this movement, the link is right there in the pinned comment. Now, before you go, watch the next video that is on your screen right now, or binge watch the playlist. Feed your spirit until there is no room for doubt. The prophecy is alive. The prophecy is you. See you later, and may God bless you.